You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 49. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and today I am talking to the incredible IO psychologist, Tiana Tai. Now, you might be wondering, what is an IO psychologist? Because let me just be honest with you, I had to Google it when I first heard of her. IO stands for Industrial Organization. And what Tiana does is she is basically a leadership coach, and she works with corporations and entrepreneurs on their hiring process. When it comes to corporations, she goes in and she helps with every process when it comes to hiring, reorgs, diversity, everything that's really messy in a corporation, and she helps them fix it. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or small business owner like myself, she works with you one-on-one to figure out what your next hire should be, how to find that next hire, how to interview for it, and how to secure it. She is absolutely amazing. I love talking to Tiana because she's one of the most knowledgeable people out there. She's a true genius. She's educated. She calls herself nerdy, but really that's code for really stinking smart. Out of this episode, you are going to hear all of this genius come out of her, and you're really going to be inspired to know that you can find your next hire. And I know how scary that is because I'm in a place myself in my business that I know I need to hire someone soon. And it's a process to figure out who and what and where and when, and to answer all of these questions by myself. So to have someone like Tiana on your side is a true blessing and such a needed help. So I can't wait to hear what you think after listening to Tiana explain to you what she does and how she can help you in your business. Hi, Tiana.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm already jumping up in my seat right now. I'm so excited.
You are too cute. I'm jumping up in my seat because we got to talk last week and you're the best. I adore you. I think you're full of energy and your knowledge is beyond ridiculous. So I'm excited to share you, not share you, but if people want to, get together with you, that's fine too. But can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Absolutely. You want me to go ahead and give the long shebang for them?
Yeah, tell them, give them the 411 on you.
Okay, guys, here we go. Buckle up. So my name is Tiana Tai, which we have already mentioned, but the long title that comes with my name is always Industrial Organizational Psychologist. I get deer in headlight looks when I say that all the time. So what the heck does that mean?
I had to Google it.
Many people do. I did when I first learned about it, right? So essentially, it is like this beautiful pairing of understanding human behavior. So that's the psychology component, right? But specifically applied to the workplace. So we are literally one of the only disciplines that I know of that actually is looking at those psychological elements, motivation, satisfaction, all of those really cool, nerdy brain things that I'm totally obsessed with. But we particularly look at them in the context of work, because guess what? We spend 1/3 of our lives minimum at work. Entrepreneurs, I'm looking at y'all. We probably spend 2/3 of our lives working, especially when we're in that, very startup phase where we're being super scrappy with it. So that is what I do. But it has been quite a journey to get here. I mean, I will say, and Michelle, I know you're familiar with Enneagram, right? So yep. I am Enneagram type 5. And you will probably hear a lot of my 5-ness come out when I talk to you because I'm super nerdy, super analytical. Actually, I just found out my subtype. Apparently, I'm a social 5, which goes to explain why a lot of people are like, you're a 5, Tiana? You're not a hermit in your house. And it's like, no. I'm a very much an introvert, but like if you will geek out with me about the things that I love and like I'm an expert and a total nerd on, oh, we could talk for hours, man. So
I love that.
yes. So true to that fashion, I always tell people like I'm one of those weird entrepreneurs who very much did believe in formal education. I did the whole shebang. So undergrad, studied psychology, got really into clinical. I swore up and down for years that I was going to be a therapist. Oh my goodness. And I ended up getting this really fantastic internship that turned into a job at a therapy office. It was like a holistic therapy office, super cool. They did all types of alternative methods as well. But under their direct mentorship, that's actually where I figured out that I didn't want to be a therapist. Honestly, I was like, I love you guys to death. I don't want to do this anymore. So that's how that happened.
That's great that you figured it out early on. You know, it could have been 20 years down the road, cough, cough, that, you know, you're like, wait, this isn't really the career for me.
Yep. And let me tell you, that's really how it would have happened had I not gotten this job to get that mentorship from these, you know, actual practitioners out there living their lives. Like I said, I'm very much an academic nerdy type person. So I went through school straight through. So had I not been there to see that and realize that that was not for me, I definitely would have went straight through into a clinical, upper graduate program. So thankfully, there was a little snag and I realized, hey, this ain't for me. And, you know, the fates, God stepped in and there were a couple of industrial organizational psychologists that showed up at my university. This is literally senior year. I had already put in applications. I'm not going to get into this, but I put in applications for neuropsychology because long story short, I realized I didn't want to do clinical. I was like, what am I going to do? I was like, let's just study brains. That sounds fun. So I put in a bunch of applications for neuropsychology. But when these IO psychologists came to speak at my school, I was like, holy goodness, who are these people? I want to be just like them. I want to learn everything they're learning. I immediately rescinded those neuro applications and I was like, we're doing IO. This is it. This is the path. Thank God for those people, by the way.
You're so smart. Like, you know, I studied law and you're like, oh, it's a 3-letter major.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're like, I was going to study the brain and very smart.
Our majors have like really long names. As I say them out loud, I'm like, Jesus, this sounds like so overly complicated.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that you did this internship and we're like, no, this isn't for me. Because I'm actually in the middle of reading this book. And in the middle, I'm not even like 50% through. And I keep wondering why it's taking so long. But it's maybe you should lie on the couch. I think that's what it is. And it's a therapist who's telling her story of being a therapist, but then also it intertwines her life and how she's seeing a therapist as well. And like, I think that part of being a therapist and listening to people's stories, that intrigues me just because I enjoy hearing what others, you know, are going through in their lives and their journeys. But at the same time, she talks about how frustrating it is when people don't do something for themselves. And I could not handle that at all. I'd want to smack someone in the face.
I think that is like the perfect sentiment and the perfect transition as to why I ended up going into IO, right? Because when you study human behavior at work, what's the one thing we can change? We can change what the environment of work looks like. So as a therapist, again, God bless the therapist. I have a therapist. I love therapists, right? Wanted to be one for years. It is really frustrating work. And I witnessed that with all of my colleagues, right, back in the day. But in IO psychology, it's still super frustrating because, oh my goodness, corporate politics, ugh. But that's why I love entrepreneurship. I'm not going to tell a lie because there's just like not as much red tape. And I can really take these principles that like these corporate clients are just going bananas over, but they move so slow. And I could take the same concepts and figure out how do they fit in the entrepreneur space? How do they fit in this unique context of the online world, which is so cool. And it makes my millennial heart so happy. And it's just really the perfect fit. So that's why I freaking love IO and I love doing it in this space.
So share how you work with corporations now. I know this. So how you work with them and how you're transitioning over to the entrepreneurial space and we can go into how I'm scared to have a team because I'm going, okay, what kind of a boss am I going to be? I am somewhat of a perfectionist. So once we talk about the corporate stuff, let's talk more about how you can be this boss that you want to be or this team leader. I want to hear all of this.
Okay. So one of the biggest differences, especially with the topics that I've kind of like put my stake in the ground around, right? So hiring, building a team, those sorts of things. We have to remember in corporate, it's not like, the business is not their baby. Of course, they care about their jobs and whatnot, but there's not necessarily that like mindset fear block around some of those things that very much exists in the entrepreneur space. So if I'm working with corporate clients around hiring or something like that, we're really going in, cleaning up the systems part of it. So we're figuring out, is their hiring process fair? Like, is it diverse and inclusive? All of those really cool things. But in the entrepreneur space, we're doing all of that. But a lot of times what I have found is we do have to touch on that mindset work because it's scary as HE double hockey sticks. This is a clean podcast, right?
So it's okay. You can say that kind of word. I mean, it's no big deal.
All right, cool. Well, it's scary as hell to like be an entrepreneur, be a solopreneur and realize, ooh, I've got to hire somebody. This is a big responsibility. Payroll. Oh my God. Do I have to pay someone consistently? All of those fears, right? That is super unique to this space, I would say. That's not something that we encounter a lot in corporate. But I think it's really, really beautiful because if we can get in and really help and educate people in this way when their business is so young, oh my goodness. Like when we go into these corporations, we're cleaning up like years of bad practices. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But if we could start off on like this beautifully right foot, it will save so much just like pain and clutter in the future.
And time and money.
Oh, yeah. Those big ones. Those are important ones.
Yeah. It's funny. Something you said just about how as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, this mindset, I think that part of it's also that we are wearing all of the hats. And it's in handing off the hat, of, oh, okay, you can do this. And on one of the episodes just a few weeks ago, I was talking about how, a leader doesn't really, from my corporate experience, nobody ever sat around and went, oh, I've got this mindset block and, I'm doing too many things. Well, no, you had someone answering the phone and you had accountants and you had HR and you had salespeople. It was like you didn't have to worry about all of this. Whereas when you are the business owner, you do it all. You answer the phone and the emails and you put the fire outs and everything. So I think that's, a major part of how do you incorporate someone new? And in the online space, it's usually someone virtual.
Yep.
So how do you go about this? How do you help people figure out who they want to hire, what they need to hire, and then find them someone that they can trust without ever meeting them face to face?
Ooh, lots of big questions there. Okay. Let's get strapped in again, guys. Here we go. Where I would actually start, again, we're talking to the entrepreneur, the solopreneur. We have to remember that, like you just mentioned, in these bigger businesses, these corporations, the structure is already existing. And if they're choosing to we call it reorg or restructure their business, that is a months-long project that all of this executive leadership is going to do. It's a very big deal and it takes a very long time, lots of change management training, all of these very corporate terms, right? So when you're a small business owner and you're just realizing that you need to hire, you have to remember that's why we feel this resistance to it, because it's not as easy, honestly, as when you're in corporate and I have this role to fill, I have this role to fill, I have this role to fill. When you're an entrepreneur, you're choosing what the roles are, what order you're going to fill them in, all of the things. And you're just oh my goodness, how do I go about this? So the first thing that I always, always, always recommend is my leaders, they have to be so steeped and rooted in what their vision for their business is. And I'm not just talking I am, of course, talking about the revenue goals and what am I going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? Of course. But a lot of times when people write out their vision for their company, they leave out what's the vision for the organizational structure? Who's on your team? How big of a team do you want? Because best believe I'm a 5, guys. my energy and like my circle is small, and that's a very 5 thing. Okay. And I have to just align myself with it. So I know for a fact, I don't want a team of 50. I don't want to grow my business in that way. So that's going to impact who I hire and when I hire them. Right. Because if I want a business that's going to scale to, let's say, I don't know, I'm going to throw out a proverbial number, like $5 million a year. Right. Okay. I need to be able to have a team that's lean and tight enough and have roles that, where it's an expert that fully owns whatever that function is. Otherwise, I would need a big team to be able to scale in that way. So these are the things that I really encourage leaders to look at in terms of actually writing out their vision with that more so structure, team functionality, lens in mind, because we don't do that often.
No, and I think that we don't go into it really expecting to get to that point per se.
Ooh.
I think that's really what it comes down to. I certainly never sat down and went, oh, someday I'm going to have a business where I'm just going to have to outsource and, have this team and help. And then you hear people around you going, oh, I had to hire a virtual assistant, or I hired an online business manager. And then you're going, oh, well, wait, maybe that's something I need too. What is it that I need help with? Because my plate's getting full too. And it comes down to what is it that I can outsource so I can spend my time better making more money than what I'm paying someone else to do.
And I think that you hit on like one of those, I guess I would call it, and I'm not super into the woo, but I believe in the woo, right? So there we go. One of those mindset blocks that we were talking about earlier. And I think that that's such a valid thought. And I think we all have it at some point when we enter into this space, which is, I'm just doing what I love and I'm trying my hat at it. It's a side hustle. It's whatever, you know what I mean? And we're not thinking about it as if, I am going to be running a 6-figure business or a multi-million-dollar business in the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of us, I feel like we play really small and we're kind of scared of claiming that. So why would we go and, think about something as tactical as organizational structure? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But honestly, once you get it in your head and you decide, yes, I'm going to make this work no matter what, then this is the logical next step, truly, is to start painting the picture. Because if you really believe in your bones that this business is going to work, then I think it's very fair to say, okay, in 5 years, what does the dang on business look like if I believe it's going to work? And again, I think you're right. If they don't believe it, then this exercise makes no sense. You know what I mean? It's just, that's
absolutely
the way it is.
Now, I hear a lot, and we heard it in one of my previous episodes too, to hire before you're ready. How do you get that is a total mindset thing to be able to just embrace that and do that? And do you work with people on how to get past that? I mean, it's definitely a psychology thing, to get to that point. So how do you work with someone on that?
That one is super hard. And a lot of times it comes down to just like what their own personal block around that is. But I will say, just practically speaking, because I'm a psychologist, I'm into the woo, but I'm also extremely pragmatic, right? So practically speaking, hiring before you're ready. Oftentimes, most people have a block with that because it's like, before I'm ready, most likely means financially, Tiana. So what the heck are you talking about?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I think when I hear that.
Oh, yeah. And here's the thing. There's a couple of ways that people do it. So, depending on, this is all super dependent on what exactly is going on in your business, right? But if you're making a little bit of profit, sometimes people will simply they'll reallocate that profit to bringing someone on before they're like super profitable. So if you're super profitable, you can hire someone on and still have profit, right, in your business. Now, if you're like just over the cusp of profitable, you can bring someone on, but essentially you're just reinvesting any profits you have directly into that new hire. But even more so, I've seen, and I personally have done this, I've operated at a deficit to be able to hire somebody to help me scale faster, right? So and that one is a really tough pill to swallow. And it also entails a certain amount of privilege, which it would be irresponsible not to put that out there. I still work with corporate clients. I still work in a boutique consulting firm serving corporate clients, and my husband is employed. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. No, I totally get that.
I can operate at a deficit if that means that I can scale my business faster and reach those levels of profit faster. But again, that's like, what's your risk tolerance? Like, how does that feel to you? I never want anybody to operate in a way that doesn't feel good to them as well. Another, just a tip, this just came to my heart because I am thinking about the person where it's like, okay, but I've got, like, I can't, you know what I'm saying? And that is valid. So one of the ways that I know a lot of people, quote unquote, hire before they're ready is they barter services, especially in this space, y'all. Entrepreneurs are so scrappy and willing to do it. Okay. Like, we all needed testimonials when we first started. So don't be shy. Find someone you can barter services with. And I know in the bigger face groups, there's like whole threads dedicated to that sometimes. And maybe that's what hiring before you're ready looks like for you. Like, there's a lot of ways to work it out.
That's a great point. And I've definitely bartered. I'm going to say back in the day, like a year ago.
Me too.
But today I'm like, no, I can't barter because I don't have time to do free work.
Exactly.
You know, even if I get something for it, I'm like, no, I just don't. That's not on my plate or my spectrum or my vision anymore. But I love that you bring that up and that you do recognize, you know, privilege. That's a word that we keep hearing quite frequently, you know, nowadays. And I think it's also something that when we look at these larger entrepreneurs, especially as women who have said, you know, oh, I didn't make a dime for the first so many years of my business. And you're like, yeah, but your husband made over 6 figures. Like, let's recognize that you didn't have to make a dime for so many years. Whereas others of us, we're kind of doing this to make the money, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I'm not taking on clients and doing PR for my health. I enjoy what I do, but I'm definitely not doing it because I think it's something that, you know, everyone should have for free.
Yep. Let me tell you. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm one of those believers, just like own where you're at. You know what I mean? And when I started this whole thing, and that's also why I've been able to kind of grow it at a pace that was comfortable to me as an entrepreneur. And I'm a little bit risk aversive. So I'm not the person who just like quit and jumped straight in. And I own that. That's not me. Like I said, I still serve corporate clients. We run an Airbnb. Like, all of these things help supplement as I build out and transition at my own pace. So we definitely don't want to make any of y'all feel like you have to do it one which way. We're definitely just giving you the options, friends. We got you.
Yeah, I am so risk averse. Like, earlier before COVID, we saw a financial planner and I'm like, oh, don't take any risk. Like, like, I don't need my stuff in stocks. And they're like, you're 38. You can take risk. I'm like, nope, I can't take risk.
You're like, can the risk be 0%, please?
Yeah, I'm like little bit, like on a 1, a 2, a 3, not 10.
I got you. I get that.
Yeah. So how is it, what's the process look like when you work with someone? I know what it looks like, but for everybody else, explain to them what it looks like to work with you if an entrepreneur wants to bring you on to figure out what they should do.
Okay. So, and I'll speak specifically to like the first step, right? Because I do work with varying degrees of leaders, and I'll explain that in a minute. So like at the beginning, a lot of times what people approach me trying to figure out is, am I ready to hire? If yes, who the heck do I hire first, right? So just that initial meeting oftentimes is us working through what are the things that you're doing on a daily basis, you know, which of those things make sense to automate, delegate, stop doing, or keep doing as the CEO of your business. And then really assessing of the things that you're going to be delegating, you know, what roles are those tasks falling into? Because a lot of times, and remind me, Michelle, we have a resource that we can definitely put in the show notes. It's a free work log, and it helps you actually capture all this thinking if you've never done it before.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That'd be great.
Okay, so we'll make sure you guys get that. But essentially, you can like do this work log I usually recommend people do it at least a week because we tend to batch work. But when you do it and you see all these delegate tasks, you can start to kind of group them and say, ooh, this one looks like, maybe I need a podcast production person, or maybe I do just need a VA who's really good with the tech stuff, or maybe I need a graphic designer because I have this major project coming up, or whatever the case may be. But it really helps to kind of see the patterns in that. But even beyond that, a lot of times what I end up having to talk someone through is what makes the most sense right now. So even if you have 3 roles that you need to outsource in the immediate future, maybe one of those roles is a better revenue driver. Maybe one of those roles is going to take so much weight off of your back that then you can do the revenue driving activities better, right? So initially that is like the biggest conversation. But then beyond that, I get really tactical with my clients. So one of my favorite things is doing like the 90-minute intensives where we will literally sit down, map out from A to Z exactly what their hiring process is going to look like once they've decided on that person, right? And then we will literally sit down and create all of these materials. So the job descriptions, the interview questions, the job application, like I could go on, but that is what we do for the entrepreneur who's just now building their team from step 1.
Amazing. And then you work with them to find that right person, right?
Oh, yeah. So afterwards, the people that I work with, they're totally in charge of actually interviewing and doing all of that stuff once they get all their hits. But, I definitely am advising on where they should post and how long they should open up the application for, all of that fun stuff. But it is really fun to provide, we love Voxer in this community. So it's really fun to provide the Voxer support as they're interviewing and trying to make those decisions, because that can feel really overwhelming. Like you may have 2 really awesome people and you're like, Tiana, how the heck do I choose? And I'm like, all right, let's talk, girl. I got you.
And then how do you go about surpassing kind of this fear of, it's not like in the corporate world where you meet face to face to meet this person. And yes, we have Zoom and everything, but there's still that, I remember the last corporate job I had to fly out to Houston, and I sat with one person, 2 people, had lunch, had dinner, it was this huge process. How do you get to the point where you feel good, when it's like a 30-minute interview?
Well, one of the things that I would start off by saying is, depending on who you are and what the role is going to be, sometimes the hiring process that we build is not just one interview. You know what I mean? So it could be one phone interview, one in-depth Zoom interview, or what have you. Technology is great. It is not the same as in-person human connection. Like, let me just put that out there. It's funny because I literally specialized in virtual leadership, and people are like, so how do you make it, eye for eye? And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't happen. Sorry, guys. That's what I learned in all of my years of education, is that in-person connection always trumps virtual connection. But at the same time, we use the term, it's called synchronous communication. That just means if we're on the phone right now, I speak, you speak back, it's at the same, at the same pace. There's no delay in communication. Same thing with Zoom. So those are honestly, until we have holograms and stuff, those are the best ways of communicating still in 2020. But what I would say just about that comfort level, one of the biggest things really is asking the right questions. That is something that really changes the game for a lot of people, because many of us, we feel like we know how to interview and we feel like we kind of know what we're looking for. But honestly, interview questions are one of the most strategic parts of the hiring process, and making sure that we're asking truly open-ended questions to where someone really is not trying to impress us. They have to give us a very specific answer about how they would handle something. So I don't know, one of the examples I love is, tell me about a time when you were given a task and you thought you knew how to complete it, but once you really dived in, you didn't exactly know what to do. How did you handle that? And just let them.
I hate those questions.
That's because they're hard. And you don't know what, and it's on purpose. And I know everybody hates them, but I got to tell you, it's on purpose, because everybody's different, and the answer that different people are looking for that question is totally different. So I remember I had one client, and she was talking about it, and the way she wanted that question answered was they need to check 3 sources before ever coming directly to me.
No.
And that was because she worked, a lot of her team was like not even just across the country. They were like internationally dispersed. So if you got to think about it like this, because if someone is waiting, 5 hours for your response, what is that doing to your team's productivity, right?
Right.
So she needed someone who could be resourceful and scrappy and really try to figure it out on their own before she freaking woke up for her day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
all totally, dependent on exactly what your unique situation is. But a lot of times asking those types of questions and really getting to know like how this person ticks, there's only so much we can do in an hour, but it's a lot better than just having them like read off their resume. Cause unfortunately, that's how a lot of interviews go.
Yeah. And then do you also help kind of coach the entrepreneur in the do's and don'ts of questions? Because I did some HR stuff like 20 years ago, which
Mhm.
is ridiculous because I was like 19 hiring people.
That's how I
But
started.
it made me, understand what the laws were. And, they're changing. I know here in California that, you can no longer ask someone's salary, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs that don't, or business owners that don't realize that there are questions you cannot ask, but maybe they don't know that. So do you go over that as well?
Yeah. So when I work okay, let me level set. I do have a hiring course. In the hiring course, I provide an interview question guide. You will not find any of those questions in that guide, and that is intentional. So if it's not in the guide, feel free to email me and ask me, like, is this a good one? Because I'm probably going to be like, no, ma'am. But when I work one-on-one with people, like in those intensives and whatnot, we do specifically sit down and we plan out every single question that they're going to ask. So that's, it's embedded in it. And they know we do not ask, do you want to have kids?
Yeah.
What was your previous salary when you worked for so-and-so? Do you have a vehicle to be able to no, we can't ask those things. There's a whole list. We won't get
Yeah.
into it, but yeah, can't ask those things.
That's awesome. You're such a resource. I know it because I've gotten to talk to you and I'm very lucky in that sense. And I plan on working with you as time goes on. So, I think that anyone who's thinking about hiring someone should come to you because it's it's a big deal.
I
Um,
have to jump because I nerd out on this one. And this has to be said. We get so wrapped up, especially as entrepreneurs, and I get it because I am one. So it's like I'm doing these things for myself while also being an expert in them, which is always a funny place to be, right? But we get so wrapped up in the marketing and the sales and and the business strategy and all of this stuff. And I always have to remind people hiring the right people for the right job is one of the most strategic things you will do in your business, point blank period, ever, because that is the method of scaling your business. And I know you can hire subpar people for messy jobs and it'll get the job done, but it won't get the job done as efficiently. And it won't set your business up to be like this reputation of excellence that I'm sure is what you're going for, doing whatever it is that you do, right? So it's one of the most strategic things that any of us can do. And I just love conversations like this and kind of slowing down and being like, okay, I don't just want you to jump in a Facebook group and grab somebody. Like, let's think this through.
You're so spot on. And when you talk about that, I think about from being a person who books people on podcasts. I can't tell you how many times I have heard, just hire someone overseas for $5 an hour and they can do it too. And I'm like, no, they can't. No, because I've seen the pitches that come through and it's not the same. And so, yeah, you can save money by, outsourcing. And I'm not saying that, outsourcing somewhere else is a bad thing, but if you want someone who's going to have a specialty to help you in your business, working just on that, then you need to hire someone who knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. I think if you need help to get by for like a specific season, do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? Grab an intern, grab whomever. But if we're talking about hiring somebody to be on your team and you want them to be with you for the foreseeable future, hopefully, most of their career, what have you, then we've got to do it with intention. And that's just good business. It is.
I love how you said that. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. I love this conversation. I want to just jump out and hire someone, but there's a method to it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with everyone how they can find you so that when they're all ready to, jump in and hire someone, they can, and about your podcast so that they can listen to you before that?
Absolutely. So anywhere you find me, I'm essentially talking about like how you as an entrepreneur can be better than your last boss, be a better leader than your last boss. That is the way that I talk about hiring, teams, team development, actually like embodying the leader that you are meant to be. And I do all of those things a lot on Instagram. So I'm at Tiana Ty. You can find me at my website, tianaty.com. And then my lovely, lovely podcast is highly focused around leadership in teams. We also do workshop style expert trainings on their various specialities. But when I'm teaching and a lot of times when I'm interviewing, we're talking all things leadership in teams. So that is TYEPOD, TYEPOD, and you can find it just about anywhere you can find a podcast.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me, Tiana. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Yes, this was so good. Oh, you asked great questions, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining Tiana and I today. I really, really enjoyed listening to her, getting schooled on everything that she knows and being able to hopefully apply it to my business. And I know it's scary, like I said in the intro, but it's definitely possible. And you can hire someone who is worthwhile and is going to help you scale your business to get it to where you want it to be. So if you're thinking about hiring someone, reach out to Tiana. She has the most amazing 90-minute strategic sessions and meets with you beforehand to do a one-on-one. It is so worthwhile. Trust me when I say that. And as always, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and go get your next new hire.